All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. So Steve has already done a little presentation, so I'll get right in. And as Steve said, we will be looking at examples from Optimize, which is a book that you do have in your system. So how to help teenagers with their speakings, not only for exams, but also beyond, because they do need it for exams, as you know, going to university is one of their main goals. So definitely something they need to do. So guys, when you hear the word champion, who comes to your mind? So either write it in the chat box if there's a chat box, or just tell me. Teresa?
Usain Bolt.
Okay. All right. Anything else? The best, yes, definitely. All right, so yeah, I mean, here are some examples. I mean, we've got Nadal, Gordon Ramsay. I know is a bit of an issue. I'm sorry, but you know, when it comes to cooking, and other examples. Now, have you ever wondered what makes a champion a champion? I mean, of course, you can claim that some people, I mean, especially some people would say that Nadal is an example of that you can claim some are just born with talents and special gifts and ability. But as teachers, we all know that without hard work, there's no mastery. And whether we talk about a musical instrument, or doing a sport, playing chess, or cooking, or in our case, when it comes to English. Now, we're all aware that without hard work, you know, there's no mastery. You might actually have heard about a rule. Have you ever heard about a rule about number of hours that might be necessary? Monica, I see you shaking your head. What was the rule you heard?
I can't remember the exact hours, but I have heard the rule. That's why I'm nodding.
It's 10,000 hours.
Yes, the 10,000 hour rule. Yes, that one. Yes, it was actually made popular by someone called Malcolm Gladwell. Yes, according to this rule, you do need 10,000 hours to master your craft. So 10,000 hours to practice, to become very good at something. So whether you're Steve Vai, whether you're Gary Kasparov, sorry, my Russian, or Gordon Ramsay. Now, they all had to spend those hours to master their skills. And supposedly, that's how you do it. I mean, that's, you know, when you think about it, that's 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 44 weeks a year, and that's for 5.5 years. That's what, I mean, you know, when you're on Facebook, you get those little motivational thing, and it says, you know, you want something, work hard at it. However, the thing about this rule is that it might not actually be correct, because think about it. It is actually a kind of a myth to some extent. Think about yourself. Now, is there something you've ever tried to learn and you kept practicing and practicing, but you kept on making the same mistake over and over and over again, and you seem to get stuck and getting nowhere? I mean, this is what we see with our learners when they have these kind of fossilized mistakes. We try and they keep making the same mistake over and over and again. Why? It's because this happens when you don't have a coach, no mentor or a guide to tell you what you're doing wrong and what you need to improve. Nadal has a coach, and we can say that to a certain extent, that's how he got to his place. Behind every good athlete, there is a coach. We as teacher play a similar role. As we don't just pass on the knowledge, we provide the model, and we guide the students towards the right direction. We cannot, you know, there's not two vases and our brain goes into theirs. That's not it. We provide the model. We try to act as a coach. And you also need a model to use provided by that great coach, which is us. So, of course, if you want to learn something, you need to practice, but you need to practice in a specific way, what we call, and what somebody called Daniel Goleman calls it, deliberate and smart practice. It was a famous book called Focus. I don't know if any of you have has any read it. It's called The Hidden Driver of Excellence. He calls it basically deliberate or smart practice, and it's not just the focus here is not only or not just on the number of hours, but the quality of the practice, which as teachers, we know that. Now, in his book, he actually quotes Andrew Erickson, which is a psychologist from the Florida State University, whose research actually started the whole interest in the 10,000-hour rule. In the words of Erickson himself, he said, you don't get benefits from mechanical repetition by adjusting your execution over and over to get closer to your goal. All right, so basically deliberate and smart practice, that doesn't mean just, it involves a little bit of reflection, of repetition, but not only repetition without any mindless repetition. We are talking about reflection and refinement. So not a mechanical drilling of the same task over and over. We are looking for reflection, we're looking for refinement, we're looking for full concentration, and we're looking for a feedback loop. So how does this very long introduction relate to you as teachers? There is method in the madness. All this, it does translate into preparing our students for oral English exams, whether, like here, we're talking about the Cambridge ESOL, or any other oral exams, and into even teaching speaking skills in general, not just for exams. So obviously, guys, do we have 10,000 hours to devote to our class? Of course not. But that's the whole idea, is that by using what we know from the research about deliberate practice, or what we can do with those time is that we can try to optimize it and create a model of how to develop speaking for exam tasks and just beyond. So this is what I intend to explain and clarify in this session. Okay? Does that sound interesting? So what we're looking for right now is we're looking at this 6-step model. This 6-step model is based on what somebody called James Lang called the retrieval effect. Okay, if you want, he said, if you want to retrieve knowledge from your memory, you have to practice retrieving knowledge from your memory. So just trying, not just having the knowledge in your brain doesn't just help. You have to practice retrieving that knowledge over and over again. So just inputting it is not enough. So what does that mean? So if you want, for example, to bake a sponge cake, okay, you need to practice baking that particular sponge cake, not all the other ones, but that particular sponge cake. And you don't actually learn from just reading Gordon Ramsay's book. There was a reason why I had put him initially in my presentation. So you don't just learn from reading his book. No. You know that, for example, if you want to get better at tennis, you're not just going to go to Wimbledon and have a look at Nadal. It's not going to be enough. You need to go and practice it yourself. You need to get better at that serve. You need to get better at that sponge. It's the same with exams. If you want your students to be able to compare 2 pictures, you know, like in the FCE, you know, compare and contrast, then you have to give them opportunities to do exactly these kind of tasks with you in the classroom on many occasions, not just once or twice. So in this model, those 6-step models, we have 6 steps which need to be followed. No step should be neglected. So we have present the model, provide resources, elicit and discuss ideas, make students practice, create opportunities for that feedback, self-reflection loop we talked about, and then repeat the procedure again. All right, so let's look at that model. Let's look at the first one. We're going to, the first step is presenting the model. And in order to do that, in that book, what they do is that they present videos where the model is there. You don't have to, you yourself, just say it. Yeah, they don't have to just listen. They can actually watch a video. They watch the interaction and everything. So, Steve, if you don't mind sharing the video, please. We've tried, as we mentioned, we've had some audio problems with that new platform. So we will need to just watch and unfortunately read. So that is presenting the model. Steve, it stopped playing.
I think I have hit my overload of my internet connection. Have you seen enough? Does that work?
Yes, yeah. We're going to work on this. Sorry about that. Google Meet. All right. So, guys, when you present a model, do you think that it matches something that you've done something? Like when you think about a writing lesson, have you done something a bit similar where you were presenting a model? Laureen, yes. Unmute yourself if you want.
Yeah, I've used email responses so that they've got a model, and then they have a task, and then they answer that email. So they know exactly how to set the email out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've done that.
Yes, I mean, you must have heard already about the difference between the product and the process approach when it comes to exactly. So we are going with the product approach, whereby you, for example, when teaching writing and teaching speaking, any of the productive skills, you show a model text or either written form or oral form, which you give them a little bit of a gist, skim, activity, and then from that they have the model text, and then they can use that as a model to just copy and adapt to their own. Well, a similar approach is actually quite beneficial for students when it comes to speaking. A speaking lesson also is based on the product approach, and this is what the optimized book allows you to, by giving this 6-step approach, with having the first one being the presenting the model. It gives you that kind, it shows you what is expected of them, what kind of language they're supposed to produce, and what else do you think it might help with? Not just what they need to say and the language they need to use, but also what do you think it might help with?
Pronunciation. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so if you provide a video that actually works, Yes, intonation, pron. Register also, yes, you're right. I mean, the way people are dressed does give you a good indication of it being formal and informal. Absolutely correct. Well done. But pronunciation, intonation is helped by this. Obviously, when the video does have the sound on. We apologize again for that. So yes, we have this in Optimize B1, the Unit 5. It is what is really giving you that presentation. So as we mentioned, let me share again this time. Okay. All right. So the model can be then used to draw the students' attention to, as we mentioned, the linguistic resources that they need to perform the speaking task. So if we look at the speaking micro skills that the students might need to work on before they become fluent in speaking, we have lots of different micro skills that will be, for example, like we mentioned, the lexical resources or the functional language, the grammatical structures, but also what else? Think about it. We mentioned the pronouncing the sound of the language. But what else? What do students often have problems with? You know, between two utterances. What do they sometimes have problem with? That little link. Anyone? Elision would be for pron.
Just when they're thinking, so pauses that they can use when they're thinking.
Yes, the little interjunctions that you can use to just go, I am still thinking, do not think, do not fail me on this one. Yes, but also things like cohesive devices, you know, had to link one to another and having like to keep the flow and to keep also the possibility of, you know, the coherence of the whole text. So we are talking about grammar, we're talking about word order, lexical resources, register, as some of you mentioned, making the main idea stand out from supporting ideas. So using semi-fixed expression, like the main idea is, or what I really meant was, so those kind of things. And the discourse, yes, the cohesive devices, as we mentioned. So that is what is provided by step 1, which is presenting the model. Then we move on to step 2, which is not just giving them a model and expect them to miraculously find the resources and drag them out. But this time what we do is we provide the resources. The book provides the resources. So for example, here it says, watch the video again. So in the previous slide, the video shown, the student's job was to notice the phrase connected with habits. I sometimes, quite fairly. So that which are then practice after watching the video, but before they actually have to produce themselves, before they actually have to produce the exam task. So we provide the model, we provide resources, and we ask them to work on those resources. Now, obviously, it depends on the nature of the task. Some resources might be of different kinds. For example, useful phrases used to describe locations in a photo, so on the left, on the right, in the foreground, in the background, which the students will need to describe any kind of photo. So that will be done for a specific task. I mean, we've mentioned the FCE with those 2 pictures, you know, choose which one do you think will be the most relaxing to you, and, you know, compare and contrast. So we provided the model, then we provide the resources. Okay. Obviously, at a B1 level, there are more phrases and constructions for describing a photo. So in most cases like this one, it's also a good idea to draw students' attention to a particular structure, not just the lexical resources, but the specific structure that they might need to use. There are present continuous, they are properly walking, they are properly thinking, they are properly, going to I don't know, they are probably going on holiday. So these kind of things. So we are thinking about providing resources, not just the lexical resources, but also the structures needed. Now, that's step number 2. Step number 3 is eliciting and discussing ideas, because when, I personally believe that between that step 2 and step 3, which are basically providing resources and then ideas and then eliciting, they're really important. Think about it. If you want our students to be confident speakers, even if it's on the limited scale, which is B1, they need to know what linguistic tools to use, which is why we provide resources, but also how to collect their thoughts, how to gather ideas. Again, as teachers, we are not just there to provide resources, but we also are on a certain level here to help them develop some thinking strategies. And this is what the elicit and discuss idea step is for. So here, for example, the students have to elicit words or phrases that are related to the photos. Some people call it a little bit like activating schematas or top-down approach, but that involves eliciting ideas, not only the vocab, but also eliciting ideas about what might be happening. So once you bring up these words from memory, you are also bringing up concepts which stand behind those words. And you can also elicit, or you can actually train your students to use WH words to elicit both ideas and words. So we're talking about asking them the who, where, when, and what questions, okay? Giving them, again, strategies to come up with ideas. So, and it is something that I am quite passionate about, is the fact that we're not just here to provide them with words they might or might not use, but also to help them develop those skills needed to gather ideas and to actually perform properly during those speaking exams. So this, for example, is from the unit 2 in the book, and it asks you to take turn to describe the photos, and it asks you to do that with the WH. Now, so up to now, we've provided the model, we provided the resources, and we elicited and discussed the ideas. Now it's finally time for the practice, because as some of you know, the worst speaking classes are when you just go around and you just say, okay, what's your thoughts? What are your thoughts on pollution? And then big silence. You expected 20 minutes of a lesson and then nothing, because there was absolutely no background work. Well, now in this approach, which I'm sure some of you follow already to a certain extent, there's already been these 3 steps prior to making the students practice. So in this, they have had their resources, they've had few ideas ready, so now they get in pairs and they practice. What do you do? Okay, of course, you go around, you monitor your students, you give them feedback, whether to pair, to the whole class, on their whole performance. You tell them what they did right, what they did wrong, what kind of good language they produced, what kind of language they might need to work on they produced. And these ones are in Unit 4 and Unit 3. Now, you can also create opportunities for feedback and self-reflection. Because giving them feedback sometimes, how many times has it happened to you? I'm a self tutor, so I know you write these amazing feedback sheets that nobody reads. So you give them feedback, but there's no self-reflection. How many times has this happened to you, that you have given them feedback on the task and you thought you have been as thorough as possible and yet did not go in? Why? Because the self-reflection part didn't take place. Now, this only works when the students know really well what is expected of them during the exam. So they knew what they were supposed to do. They know the model answer, and they know the criteria of a given exam, obviously. So after the students do the task in pair or whatever speaking activity you've designed, in pairs or in groups of 3s, here's what you do first. You take 2 volunteers. I mean, if the exam is taken in pairs or if the speaking activity is done in pairs, and then they perform that in front of the class. Obviously, try to take the strongest, because for confidence sake, obviously. To be more precise, they face you. So like a real exam. So for example, if it was a ESOL exam, the rest of the class would be standing where the where the person who grades would be. And you would be doing this. Now, on one-to-one classes, you could be the interlocutor. If most of you are teaching one-on-one, you can definitely do that with them. Okay, be the one that it will be the other partner in the exam, and videotape so that you can watch it afterwards and create that self-reflection loop. So you and the students, or just the students, give the you do the task and they perform the task, and then either on one-to-one, if you're in a one-to-one context, you watch that video and even themselves have to do some reflective feedback, or you can, and if you're in a group setting, the rest of the class can also give them reflect a constructive feedback. Another way of creating opportunities for feedback and self-reflection is that you can, if you're not in a one-to-one, one-on-one setting, you can also make them work in groups of 4s. So 2 people are the examinees and 1 is interlocutor, just asking questions and assigning the task, obviously provided by you, and the 4th person makes notes on the performance and errors. That is different to the previous one because there are 4. You are not the examiner. The students are. Everyone can actually, after it's done, so the interlocutor is measuring the time, the person that is making notes on the performance and errors has more time to digest the information, and then once this is done, everybody can speak and express their opinions. Go, oh, that was easy, that wasn't, oh, you've done that, you've made that mistake, you've done this, you've done that, or you did this really nicely. Is it when you do it next time, swap the roles and make sure that they take on all the roles before they make new groups. They can have a group discussion about what was the most difficult, what kind of errors were most common, how to avoid them. Now, this actually does work well because I don't know if you've noticed, candidates tend to be even harsher and stricter than the examiners. I mean, as us, we go, oh, it wasn't that bad. And they go, no, it was horrible. And you're like, gee, people, be nice. But it does allow for this, oh, well, they've done this and this was bad, therefore I shouldn't be doing it. So it does allow this reflective loop, which we talked about. Then you repeat, obviously, the task. And that's the 6th step. Why? Now, you don't repeat this task in the same lesson. Maybe do it the lesson afterwards or the week after. But this time, make them work with the new partner for the sake of novelty. Or if you're on a one-to-one basis, change the subject. Do something, not change the subject. Like just try to slightly alter the subject, but it stays the same so that you know what model you were supposed to follow. Because once the students were given feedback on their performance and they repeat the task again, their performance will be better. So if you're on the one-to-one basis, maybe stop what you're doing, like continue with another task, and then the week after, the lesson after, make them redo the same task. Obviously, research has evidence shows that giving feedback, then asking learners to repeat the task can produce real improvements in the quality of the learner's production. But don't do it back to back. Otherwise, you will experience what all of us have experienced, which is learner fatigue. They just go, please, enough. They've got enough of this. So when they are redoing the task, the good thing is that they will, because they've already done exactly the same task, they will not be focusing on what to say only, but they'll be focusing on how to say it, because they've already done it. They actually tend to monitor themselves more and correct their own errors, because they often say even more as they add more information. So make sure that you repeat the task. They have more ideas. So don't make them, when you're repeating the task, if you are in a group setting, don't make them repeat in front of the whole class or in groups of 4. Don't. Just I would just let the experience sink in. I would ask more general questions in the feedback, like, how was it the second time? Was it easier or more difficult? So this idea of rehearsed fluency, that you rehearse a certain speaking task until you become fluent at it, it is something that you can not only use to practice exam speaking tasks, like we said, but any other speaking task in class, like telling stories, anecdote, or preparing short 1-minute answers to questions like these ones, for example. Tell me something about the place where you live. I mean, how many times have you used this exact subject, and yet, oh, nice, I live somewhere very nice. Oh, thank you. Yes, let's get on with this. So let's try to do more. So again, go through those 6 steps. Show them a model. Provide them with resources. Elicit some ideas. Make them practice that. And then repeat it, not during the same class, but a bit later on. Okay? Now, obviously, we're not talking about making them learn anything by heart. I mean, when we say repeat the task that they rehearsed before, but we're not asking them to remember. We are just asking them to build on what they've said. And like we showed, the research does show that it tends, speakers or candidates tend to speak more and focus more on how than what, because they've already focused on the what. So it gets improved at the same time as the how. So they can do it again, this third time with another partner. So you don't have to just do it once or twice. You can even do it a third time. Just make sure that you space it so that it doesn't become repetitive and they don't start learning the things by heart. So when the students have done their work on the resources and thought about what to say the first time they did it, every next time will be a chance for them to work on their fluency within the limited tasks that they're doing, obviously. However, rehearsed fluency it does turn your students into more confident speakers. And as we've seen in the research that was quoted before, it makes them better speakers and better learners as a result. Something very important, though, is for the model to actually work, all the steps need to be followed. So without a proper model or a variety of resources and some key ideas, it is difficult for a student at, let's say, A2 or even B1 to provide a coherent, error-free answer that is longer than just a short close of, yes, I like. So the first 3 steps are very important. But if we just provide the resources and make the students practice their task, then repeat them again, the danger is that the whole thing will just turn into a drill. Like we said, automatic repetition. So they might think they're improving, but actually they're not. They're just repeating the task without getting better at it. Lang said in his book, asking students to drill the same task over and over again puts them on autopilot, prevents them from refining and further developing their skills. So the key here is stage 5, which is what makes it deliberate and smart practice. Students repeat the task, yeah, that's for sure, but they need to be given feedback by you, by their peers. And if you're on a one-to-one basis, by themselves, videotape them and then ask them for some feedback and add your feedback to them. They need to be given a chance to think about what they need to improve and how. And then they need to be given an opportunity to work on what they've just discovered, to do the task again. and hopefully do it in a better and an improved and refined manner. So full concentration is needed, that feedback loop we mentioned. So champions are not born in a day. So neither Rafael Nadal or Garry Kasparov were born champions. They might have had a little bit of talent, but they have put a lot of hard work either in tennis or chess. However, and that is where we come in, they had people to learn from, coaches who pointed out their errors, who helped them get better. So, for example, without Tony Nadal, some would argue there would be no Rafa Nadal. And who knows? Maybe there would be no Garry Kasparov without his first chess coach, which you'll be happy to know was called Vladimir Makogonov. So without smart and deliberate practice, it's difficult to make progress in anything. Going back to my sponge cake, my personal trial is the croissant. I cannot do it. I have tried. I cannot, no matter what. But because I've never had a coach to help me, I've just had those books. So without smart and deliberate practice, it's difficult to make progress in anything, especially given we have, I had all the time in the world to learn croissant, I had to make croissant. But here in the classroom, we have a limited number of hours. And we know from research, and we know from our everyday classroom work that that model works. And that step by step, one speaking task after another, whether they are exam or non-exam, fluency in speaking will emerge. Slowly, which is sometimes frustrating, but surely. Rehearsal and repetition bring optimal results, but only when done in the smart way. So, thank you so much, everybody. That was my presentation. And I believe now is the time for questions, if you have any.
Thank you, Cristina. Fab. We do have some time for questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Sasha.
While you think of your questions, pop your hands up if you have any. I really love this concept of rehearsed fluency, and I think, to me, it's a bit like, when you play the pairs game and you have all the cards face down, and the longer you play, the more you remember where the cards are, so your hand goes to them quicker. And it's just that, isn't it? It's not about getting students to practice statements over and over again so that they repeat them by rote, but it's about getting students' brains trained, getting that muscle memory into the brain so that students quickly access that information and pull it out quickly. It's about practicing accessing their data, isn't it? So cool. I love it. Thank you so much.
If some of you have had dealings with teaching literacy, adult or children literacy, you will, that hand to brain kind of link, that muscle memory is essential for literacy. Well, it is even going further in the acquisition of language. This is essential. You need that practice, but that deliberate one, not just, scribbling on the thing, just deliberate one, which is what we try to do. Sorry, Steve, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. Deliberate is the best way, right? Absolutely. And also introducing reflective practice into the classroom. I'm a huge fan of reflexive practice. I think getting students to sit down and spend 15 minutes thinking about what they've done well is good. When you have your, put my Macmillan hat on for a minute, but a lot of the materials that you use have progress trackers, and you have access to them, but your students also have access to their progress tracker. And it's lovely to say, okay, take 15 minutes, go and sit on the sofa, look at your progress tracker and think about 2 things that you're doing really well, that are going really well for you, and a couple of things where you really want to focus on and do better. And promoting self-reflection is so important in the classroom, isn't it?
We're very lucky. We are all part of the, with the technology nowadays, we can, and students can record themselves, which, we as teachers abhor the sight of mobile phones in the classroom. However, it can be such an amazing tool for recording and allowing them to have that self-reflection. Because if you just ask them, okay, what did you think happened? And what did you think was nice? And they go, no idea, I was busy talking. But if they have this and you've just plopped it up and they could record and they can watch themselves, it's such an amazing tool.
Fabulous tool, fabulous tool. Marie is making the point that for one-to-one students, there are lots of useful videos on YouTube about speaking to use as models. In your materials that you have, your Macmillan library there, remember to go to your teachers' resource centres for things like Ready for IELTS, Ready for B2 First, and Optimize. In all three of them, in the teachers' resource centres, you'll find model speaking activities and videos that you can watch with your students for exam style speaking if you want. So that's all there. And actually, even if your student isn't prepping for exams, I kind of find those exam speaking activities can be really useful, and it can be a good framework to set up as a test for your, you know, like a test if you want to do a test. But it's a good way to test student speaking and say, this is what we're going to be testing you on. A really nice thing to do. Look, it's 1:15, so we have a little break. But before we go to break, I told you Cristina was great, didn't I? I told you you would love her. She's fab.
You're so sweet.
Thank you so much, Cristina. Thank you
It
so
was
much.
a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on. And I've seen you have a little bit more. I've seen the schedule. So enjoy the rest of the day. I hope you enjoyed Steve writing, which I know is an absolutely amazing session. So I'll let you be. Thank you so much for having me on. And it was a pleasure seeing you and meeting you all. And thank you, Steve. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you, Cristina.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.